Divorce by its very nature tends to be a messy affair, but sometimes when things hit rock bottom, one parent tries to turn the kids against the other. That can lead to false accusations of physical or sexual abuse and sometimes even murder. Today, Catherine McWillie and Dr. Jane Major are here. They belong to an organization Help Stop Parent Alienation of Children, or Parent Alienation Syndrome. Catherine's a Southern California police officer, and Dr. Major has a PhD in education and teaches parenting. Very happy to have you both here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I just want to say, in general, in a divorce, the parties may not be, there may be no love lost. Well, there is some love lost between the two. They may not like each other very much. Yeah. But what makes this worse than a normal divorce situation? What is parent alienation syndrome?
People can become terribly obsessed with having the child love them and love them alone. Mm-hmm. And that means that they have to X out the other parent. And it really is a sickness. It really is an obsession to eliminate. I want this child to only love me and take care of me. And essentially, the alienated child is in the role of taking care of the parent who's doing the alienation. Mm. It's a very serious problem.
And you consider it to be mental illness in some cases on the part of the parent?
The normal people don't act like that. Normal people solve their problems as they develop. They don't escalate their problems with drama and come in with all kinds of false allegations and create mayhem. Especially, they don't use their child as a pawn.
Right, the children really become weapons in effect. And in fact, I think, or at least Catherine said that you can consider it child abuse as well.
It's the worst case scenario of child abuse because children are having their will and their choice taken away from them. And they're also having a parentectomy where that healthier parent is removed, cut out from the child's life, but so are the grandparents, the relatives, the friends. This child has lost innumerable resources that could help them grow up in a healthy way.
Now, the interesting or the unfortunate thing about this is, though, that it's not even just the parent bad-mouthing the kid, but really you get the kid participating in effect, right? Because you have the kid, not just mommy saying daddy's a bad guy or daddy saying mommy's a bad woman, but the little kid starts saying, oh, I hate daddy or I hate mommy.
Brainwashing. That's brainwashing and programming, and they believe it. Children are very suggestible, and if they hear this message over and over again about what a horrible person their mother is or their father is, and by the way, this is gender neutral.
Right.
As many women get involved in this horror as men do.
Well, and that's why I guess we'll take that on right at the beginning then, because I didn't realize until Catherine pointed out this to me, but really in effect this is sort of a political subject because the National Organization of Women, I read on their website, has denounced the whole concept and said it does not exist. It's a construct of men or the system used against women. And so by coincidence, when I heard this, although I probably would have invited someone from there if I'd known sooner, but by a great coincidence, all three of my guests today are women, and you're saying it exists, absolutely. So what is your take on that? Is it now says it doesn't exist and you're crazy? And
it's just a profound ignorance of the problem. And that's one of the reasons that I started the Stop Parent Alienation of Children, because across the board there is so much ignorance on this subject. Mm-hmm. It's very, very painful to see children falling through the cracks if people don't understand the nature of the problem and the seriousness of the problem. It would be really grand. I'd love it if we could just sort of get a magic eraser and erase this horrible thing. Mm-hmm. But a lot of women seem to have singled out men as being the perpetrators of this horror against malicious men against women, good mothers. But mothers do this as much as men do this.
Right. Yeah, and I have no doubt.
It's a gender-neutral thing.
Yeah, and I just assumed when we were first discussing this that it worked both ways. It never occurred to me that some women would take issue saying that, oh, the guys are just saying that because, they can use it.
They're trying to get the advantage in court to have custody of their child when they're really this horrible person, and the horribleness has been fabricated. Cannot be proven because it's...
Now, in some cases, though, as I believe, Catherine, you were saying, though, the courts and the legal system, though, may not be aware of this concept or what's really happening. What do you see as a police officer out there?
As a police officer, what's happening is we're getting pulled into the custody issue just like schools are being pulled into it, just like hospitals are being pulled into it. You know, it's no longer a custody problem that occurs strictly in the courts and strictly in the family. As the children become more brainwashed, as they become more stronger in their position that a physical abuse or a sexual abuse has occurred, now the schools are calling the police department to conduct an investigation. Police department responds, and then we're also bringing in Department of Children's Services. Then the children's courts may be involved. The district attorney's office may become involved. It's no longer a simple issue that's just occurring in the family between two parents, and with the court making the decision as to whose custody the children should go to. Now we're bringing in the legal system, and because it's still an issue that has not been decided upon by many, not being recognized, there's no training.
Right.
Now, for law enforcement officers, we, as soon as we hear that it's a custody or there's a divorce, we give perhaps a little less credibility to some of the allegations. And we'll look for the children mimicking statements that are not appropriate to their age. We'll look for body language that may not be appropriate in their behavior towards the one parent or the other. Something that doesn't fall within what would normally occur in a child abuse investigation.
But I'm assuming, though, that this puts you in a really difficult position, because on the one hand, these are very serious allegations, and nobody denies. I mean, there are men who beat up their wives, or husband and wives who kill each other or sexually abuse the kids. These things happen, but yet when somebody's fabricating it and using it as a weapon against the other one, you know, you can't minimize the potential seriousness, but yet you can't. So how do you deal
Well,
with
the problem is you always want to err on the side of caution. You always want to err on the side of protection of the child. So, you know, that's what society says. We are a society built around wanting to protect our children at all costs. Well, sometimes that means that we're putting parents through terrible legal system in dealing with the issues. We're subjecting people to false allegations. We're putting them through interviews. They're having to get criminal attorneys for protection. And then the other issue that's not even recognized is what are we doing to the children? You know, the children are being reinforced to tell a story against dad, or they're being reinforced to tell a story against mom. They're actually being encouraged. And the more they get involved in the story, the more incredible the story becomes. That's how we tell sometimes. But they become very convincing. And so how do you help protect a child when in some ways they're being encouraged to talk about this scenario by the district attorney's office, by the police officers? And then when you do finally prove if it is false, because obviously there are valid complaints of child abuse investigation, that's what makes it so hard. You want to protect children from valid allegations. When you have a false allegation that comes back, how do you mend the relationship?
Right, because at the very least, you're talking the child, even if they think they hate the parent, they're losing a parent in effect.
Correct.
There is a cost there, even if they don't know it. If they think daddy's an evil person or mommy's an evil person, they lost a parent that, you know, they could have had him otherwise.
What is hard to understand is that these allegations need to be proven. But so often what prevails in court is not the truth, it's the appearance of truth. And it's because the severity of the he said and she said and the confoundedness of the complexity of all of this, the targeted parent is in a serious defensive posture trying to prove what didn't happen really didn't happen.
Because as with so many of these false accusations, that just the mere accusation is enough to cast doubt on you.
Right, and as you say, we caution on the side of protecting the child, especially if there's a sexual molestation. That's the holocaust of a family, is to throw that false allegation out, and then how do you prove that that didn't happen? It's, you know, there's a lot of backlash back and forth among men and women on this issue. What we want to do is shed some light on what is the issue. What is parent alienation? Any of us could recognize it. Parent alienation is any time a parent speaks badly about another parent in a way that the child can hear it. And that can go from mild, moderate to severe, or the obsessed parent.
We'll pick up on that in just a minute. We'll be right back. we're back with Catherine McWillie and Dr. Jane Major today talking about parental alienation syndrome. Well, you raised a good point about the degrees of severity, and also I'm wondering, is it it's not necessarily always intentional, perhaps? It could be unintentional. Or unaware?
You know, the parents who do the mild and the moderate version of it, they can be reached. The parent that goes ballistic and loses control and they can go to anger management parenting, all kinds of therapy, and get some help to realize this is not the way to be. Mm-hmm. But the obsessed parent, we have no protocol for helping them. We can't reverse that. They are done. And now we have to do this dance or this reaction to whatever they do, because they don't bend. It's a very serious psychiatric problem that they have.
How common is this?
In that top 10 to 15% of the people who routinely go back to family law court, it's extremely common.
Okay. And do you know, I mean, what numbers are we talking? I think you had said something about possibly
well, you know,
millions of people, right?
I'm right now, I'm at a point where I'm trying to question some of the numbers and the research, you know, as I have my own company and I've been doing research in this issue for the past 10 years with my company, Custody Calculations, and I'm starting to question some of the numbers. The mild and severe happen in almost, you know, almost every case.
Well, that's what I'm
where
wondering.
Where there's not an amicable divorce.
Right,
and even
that's
when
the thing. You don't like, you're getting a divorce, you probably don't like the other person. And I think a lot of people don't go for the high road. So I mean, I think there's a tendency almost by default in divorce to go for the low road, and you get into situations like this.
Well, and the family law courts are set up for an adversarial position, and they reward the winner. And the winner is the one who plays the game to win at all costs. And let's face it, children are the prize in family law. You know, they are the most sought after, forgive me, but asset when parents come to divide up the family. You know, their whole future is affected, one parent or the other, in rewarding the children, and it comes with a lot of emotional reward for the parent. I'm a good parent, I'm going to have my children love me more than they love the other parent. There's tremendous pressure put on the children, tremendous.
Yeah, it's just
unfairly.
Unfortunate. You know, you hear, and sometimes you don't believe it when you hear people say they're getting a divorce, but they're still friends. But suddenly that
The
sounds
lucky few.
preferable to the idea that, you know, winner take all.
The majority of people can figure it out. They can share their children. The majority of children do share their children. In California, we have a presumption of shared custody for the last 26 years. And so that's an assumption. But we're talking about the really severely wounded people that cannot share their children at all.
You consult with parents.
Yes, I do a lot of consulting with parents that have parent alienation syndrome.
What percentage of parents do you think are able to stand back and say, okay, we're getting a divorce, I don't like him, or she doesn't like, you know, him, or he doesn't like her, whatever, but we're not going to drag the kids into it? How many people can stand back and say that?
I think the statistics, about 85% of parents can figure it out. I mean, they'd be very angry with each other initially, but they figure it out eventually, and things calm down. Again, it's that top 10 to 15% that cannot negotiate, they cannot go to mediation. This is a winner-take-all mentality.
And you said there's not really much you can do with those people?
You can't fix those people. So now what? And as you said, the courts reward the parent who comes in and is, there is very few sanctions for anybody that makes a false allegation about anything. And that's very bizarre. They don't go to jail, they don't pay heavy fines, they don't have community service. There's no,
well,
there
because
might
in our
be a little
adversarial
hand slap,
system,
and that's it. And it encourages people, and the delays in family law court are horrific. And so therefore the alienation can continue unabated all this time.
So what do you think is the solution? What reforms
Well, for one
would you like
thing,
to see?
these people have built a house of cards because the children do not want this. They want both of their parents in their lives. And many of these children can be brought back with the right kind of care if the most disturbed parent can be isolated from their life so that they're no longer doing this alienation. So in the article I wrote, Parents Who Successfully Fought Parent Alienation Syndrome, what kinds of things work when you have a parent that's that disturbed that you have to work around the person, you can't work with them.
Right.
And there are ways, there are strategies that can really
Meaning
work.
if you're trying to take the high road and the other one's taking the low road.
You'll probably lose.
Lose.
I mean, you have to take that, no, I'm kidding. You have to take the high road and be the decent person, and when you come out the other side, you have to be seen as the sane one. You know, if you're the sane one, act the part, right? You have to be seen as the stable one. Those
So
are the
don't get
people
caught
that
up in the
prevail.
drama and,
Well, people do get caught up, and it's heart-wrenching. It will just tear your heart out what goes on here.
And the problem is, too, is going back to the courts don't want to reward bad behavior. They want as much to make good decisions, good rulings, but they really aren't aware of how they contribute to the scenario, how they reward for bad behavior, how they encourage it, and they don't realize what the impact is to law enforcement. You know, again, I know that Dr. Major is pointing out that it's 15%. Well, as an officer responding to radio calls, I'm telling you, the crime in the United States, 25% of our crime in this country, from suicides, homicides, domestic violence, child abuse investigations, it's related to family law. That's pretty, that's pretty big numbers. When you talk about 16,000 homicides in this country and 4,000 of them may be related to family law.
And speaking of homicide, I believe that one of the people who, I don't know if he was the founder of the one organization, but that helped stop parent alienation, but it was at least in memory of one guy who was actually killed by the child.
Right.
Do you want to tell us what happened in that situation?
Yeah, it was a terrible situation. The child's under the age of 10. The father has been accused of physical abuse, allegations of abuse numerous times, investigated, it cleared. He happens to be a doctor, and the parents were going through a divorce. He gets his hands on a handgun that's owned by his mother.
The son.
Yeah,
the son. And when he's going for visitation in custody to visit his father, he shoots his father. That's the extreme case of parental alienation. But
and apparently something like the mother was right there or knew about it, or he went in the house
Yeah,
with a gun.
she's a nurse. This is this is Dr. Lostro, Rick Lostro, Help Stop Pass, for anybody that's interested in knowing about that. The son, who's now 12, has now been sentenced to the Texas Youth Authority, and will for a very severe sentence for it.
Wow,
Not realizing that there was serious parent alienation going on the part of his mother to get it to the point where he would pick up a gun and shoot his father in the back several times.
But that's the point that we're talking about here, is we're pushing children to the point where they're breaking. They're breaking under the stress of being forced to pick one parent or the other, or being forced to the point where violence is now being taken out against the parent because they don't have anywhere to go.
And just the tragedy of that is that, okay, so she got rid of the SOB in her opinion, but the kid now is in jail. For murder, and so...
His life will be permanently
A lot
changed.
of children, if they can recover from this, are horrified at how badly they have treated the really good parent after the fact.
We'll be right back.
Now you have got to promise me, Jake, that you are not going to tell any of the people at the viewing that Mrs. Bender was killed by a zombie. Promise me. It's disrespectful, and it'll upset the old people, and before you know it, they're going to be dropping like flies. I'm just joking, honey. No one else is going to die. Okay?
What's a restraining order?
A what?
A restraining order.
A restraining order? It means that Peter can't come to the house anymore.
Why?
Because the court said so, at least for a time being.
Why?
We discussed this, Jake. Remember all of the things that your daddy did? Remember how he left you in the car, and when you came home that one night, how upset you were?
Yeah.
Well, that's wrong. That's wrong, and you could have been hurt. And until we go to the court and get all these things figured out, I really don't want to put you in any kind of danger. Okay? It would kill me if I let Peter harm you in any way. Do you understand? Good. Okay. Look, I don't want to go to this funeral any more than you do, but we were the last people to see Mrs. Bender alive, so we've got to go. Okay? Just my luck. Now I gotta find a new babysitter.
We were taking a look at Jake's Closet. Joining me now is the writer and director of that film, Shelley Ryan. Very happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Well, when I saw that film a few months ago at the screening, I told the publicist afterward, I said, that just reminds me of the awful things that people do during divorce. And when I came across this topic, I thought, wow, I just saw a movie about that. You hear the mother basically fishing for a reason to get a restraining order, is the way I take that. Is that?
What I heard was the example of the suggestibility of children. And all of this mystery is going on around them, and it doesn't feel good because it isn't good. What is a restraining order? Well, why would you get a restraining order against my dad? And the explanation that is given for it is confusing, and there's no sense to be made of it in this child's experience. So mom has the opportunity to prevail in this.
Mm-hmm. And she's looking for a reason. Like, oh, he left you alone in the car. Or, oh my God, how
Right.
could you do that? No, whether or not you
Right.
should, but I mean, she was looking for a reason there. Because one thing that you show in some of the other scenes is there's the neighbor who I think in a way is kind of manipulative and is kind of talking her into, like, you know, you better get a good attorney or take him to the cleaners and, you know, you don't have to put up with that crap. But this was based on a friend of yours, someone you know, is kind of where you got the idea?
Yeah, I had watched a girlfriend of mine go through a divorce, and she had a little boy about Jake's age, and I kind of watched her incrementally. It started off very civil, and you know, as time went by, things got a little bit more hostile, and soon enough, he was refusing to go on visits, and then. You know, I guess the end of the story is that one day she called me and asked me if she should have him deported.
Wow, her husband, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
her ex. I
Okay.
mean,
So he wasn't a citizen here or something? Or?
no, it was. I don't know if she could have done that, but that was the obsession that she had. And I could, by the time she had called me, she had been thinking about it for days and probably researching, and you know, and I talked her out of it, you know, based on her own desire to, you know, I told her that her son would then blame her later, and that seemed to be a decent argument. But what touched me about this was, you know, watching what was usually a really rational, loving person kind of go off the deep end, you know, with all the emotion
That
involved.
is what I said to Kim, your publicist, afterward. I said, you know, that is a smart woman or a smart director or person, very perceptive about human nature, the way people are. Because again, you could see that she was kind of getting, you know, she was going down at one step
Progressing.
at a time.
The
and-
obsession that she had, it starts off mild enough, but then it starts to take a life of its own. And that's what's so disturbing, because there's just no end to the allegations. They create a reality, and then they believe their creation, and it has nothing to do with what the truth is.
And in this case, then the little kid ends up, well, I won't give away too much, but ends up, maybe we'll say a bit.
He manifests his anxiety through an imaginary problem that, you know, causes more problems for everybody in the family. But
Do you know what happened in real life? What happened with the little kid now, or has some time gone by?
I
or-
think, you know, with time things leveled off, but, you know, I remember at the time just feeling for him, being able to see how confused he was by the whole thing, and which led me to do more research and interviews with former children of divorce and get their stories as well.
So you
which
did
all-
research as well, because again, I thought it was interesting to find out kind of at the last minute that Now was opposed to this, because you're both women, you're both saying it happens. You know, what do you say to that, people who say you're making it up? I mean, you did your research, you made a movie about it. Are you making it up, or does it happen?
It's very real. They just don't understand how real that is, and how dangerous it is for women. There are many men that do this, and many women that do this to men.
Right.
To say that,
Oh, it works both ways. I
yeah,
have no
it's
doubt.
absolutely both
Yeah.
ways, and it's preposterous that there's anybody on the planet that doesn't see what you saw in that family.
I think some of the controversies over the syndrome title, you know,
It
the
is.
behavior is very real.
It is.
It happens it happens in the mildest forms, and probably most divorces, you know, when things are tense.
That's what I thought.
And
I
a
thought,
parent
my God, it
says
happens so
something
often
hurtful
that-
about the other
No,
parent.
it doesn't matter what you call this problem, the brainwashing and programming of children, you could call it whatever.
Right.
But it happened to be called parent alienation syndrome by Dr. Richard Gardner. He was the first to identify this problem. And he's come under serious attack. And therefore the name has come under, the designation of PAS has come under serious attack.
But thank you both very much for being here today, Dr.
pleasure.
Major
Thank
and
you.
Shelley Ryan. The film is Jake's Closet. Thank you also to Catherine McWillie. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.